Welcome to Mediumship Moments with psychic medium Kim Durham. Join her as she shares her personal journey with mediumship, connects with your loved ones, and discusses topics dealing with spirituality.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mediumship Moments. I know I stopped for a second there. Did I forget my name? No, I didn't. I am your host, Kim Durham, second-gen psychic medium. First off, want to thank everybody for listening. Wow, there's a whole lot of new ears out there, and I can't say thank you enough. You listen on Spotify, Apple, and you're watching my podcast on YouTube, Kim Durham Medium. If you're interested in some upcoming events or where I'm going next, because you know me, I love to throw some crap in a bag and off I go. Check out kimdurham.com events for my upcoming events schedule. So today on the podcast, I thought we'd talk about psychometry. Now, I realized I talked about clairaudient, and this is a type of clair, if you will. It is a claircognizant of knowing, feeling, and I use it in the murder cases, missing persons, and cold cases that I work on. And it's called psychometry. So I wanted to talk about what that is and how I use it, right? So let's get into a little of the nitty gritty of it. They talk about it being a fascinating skill that allows individuals to perceive the history of the object by simply touching it. They say those with those insights can that ability can gain insights by holding it in their hands or even pressing it against their forehead. Remember this area here? That's your third eye. And picking up those impressions they receive that can manifest into images, sounds, scents, taste, and emotions. It's something that I have seen my mother do, Joan Friel Durham. She was me mother, and who started PSI Psychic Studies and Investigations way back when in the late 70s, mid 75. I think 74, her parapsychology group. And they would practice this. And I actually have an upcoming workshop that I'm going to teach people how to do this. So listen up for anybody out there about this. You'll get a little bit of a heads up on the class. But what is it, right? So psychometry is a unique type of scrying is what they call it, right? In which a psychic method of seeing beyond the ordinary. While some people use tools like crystals, black glass, or whatever surfaces they're scrying, holding on to, trying to get the impressions, psychometry offers a different approach through tactile interaction. So they might sense someone's personality or action or even circumstances to their death, right? Notably, the psychic can often tap into the emotions where they were felt at specific moments within the lifespan of the person who was wearing an object, right? A ring, a watch, a key fob. Geez, I've held on to sneakers, clothing, but however, to me, the level of the object I hold on to will garner some type of accuracy. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, so you hold on to a pen. Yeah, I actually had somebody bring in a pen because the pen was always in Dad's pocket. I'm not judging. And it was a Blanc Mont Blanc. And Dad always had it. Well, that always in his pocket would be ingrained, if you will, in a sense, with his energy. And I would feel, touching this, I could start to describe his office. I could start to describe the car he drove, the places he went to, some psychological feelings he might have been having. And that's what psychometry is. Now, different items will retain different types of energy. For me, strictly speaking for me. So, and I've done this in classes. It's pretty interesting when you give people an item and they start to gain this information, this energy from just holding that item. So let me give you a little bit of history about psychometry, okay? And, the term was introduced by Joseph R. Buchanan in 1842. It was derived from the Greek words for soul, meaning psyche, and measure, metron, So Buchanan, an American physiologist, and he was a physiological professor, a physiology professor, right? Was among the pioneers in exploring psychometry. I think that's pretty cool. I love when science geeky people like me use something like this. So he conducted experiments with his students. This is pretty cool. He asked them to identify various drugs contained within glass vials. Well, remember, 1842, right? Little glass probably had a cork on the top of it. Simply just by holding them. And remarkably, really, their success rate far exceeded random chance. There's statistical analysis that we do and can correlate random chance. And theirs was far above typical random choice. He then documented his findings in the publication Journal of Man and explained this intriguing phenomenon. He proposed that every object possesses a soul that retains memories. So his findings, William F. Denton, it was inspired by Joseph Buchanan's findings, right? So William F. Denton, a geology professor, sought to test psychometry with his geological samples. And because this correlates to crystals, right? So in 1854, he collaborated with his sister, Anne Denton. I think her last name was Cridge. Anyway, he covered the specimens with cloth, right? So he had stones and he covered them in cloth to prevent her from seeing them. And when she placed the wrapped items against her forehead, now again, that's the third eye psychic center, she was able to vividly describe the specimens through mental images she received. Yeah, just like that. So how does that work? It's really interesting because you can do this with any kind of instruments, regardless of their solidarity, their porous or their porous nature. These small crevices can capture fragments of the mental aura from their previous owners. So how does it work? As I talked about, it doesn't matter what energy form it takes, whether it's a solid, a powder, a liquid. It all retains energy from a previous owner. So it's passed down. Now this is interesting. If the item's been passed down through generations, it brings up former owners. So someone handed me a wedding band, and I held it, and I saw 3 brides. I saw the figure of 3 brides, and then I saw a fountain in Italy. Piazza with a fountain. Well, here, her great-grandmother, who was from Italy, was the first bride to wear it. And she's like, how did you know that? It was just a picture, an image that I had seen. And for me, I'm very much photographic, if you will, visual in nature over that. And, it passes down that energy psychically. It's kind of like a tape player playing over and over again, relaying the object and the information. And I was picking that up. When did I realize I could use psychometry? Well, it's a funny story, right? We were out to dinner, all the family, 4 kids, and my dad and mom. And my brother took off his wallet and put it on the table. Well, my mom picked up the wallet and said, who's Lance? Well, the look on my brother's face, he about to just drop dead right there on the spot. And she proceeded to talk about what my brother did that day and why he was fishing with Lance instead of being in school. Yep. He was playing hooky and he got caught. And yep, even though we couldn't get away with much with mom, God knows we tried. But that's a funny story of how I saw my mom pick up an object and use her psychic skills for psychometry. And then I talked to my mom about it and said, what is this and what is that like? And I was pretty interested in it. So let's talk about my cases that I use this ability in, right? in every case, it's a little bit different. And I say that it's somebody. It's somebody, right? It's a son. It's a daughter. It's a brother. It's an uncle. It's an aunt. It's a mother. It's a father, right? Could be a grandparent. I never, ever lose focus of that there's a somebody attached to this item. So I ask for these items, whether it's a murder case, a missing persons, or a cold case. And I can see the chapters within the pages or the pages within the chapter of somebody's life. I'll talk about a recent case. I really can't go into too much detail because you never know who's listening. But I currently am working on this, right? And the family brought in a cigarette case. Now, I could hold on to the cigarette case and started to describe the person, the woman who had the cigarette case. I started to describe her residence, and it was a very unusual place that she lived in. And I talked about some structural issues within that residence, and they were shocked that I could pick that up. I even talked about her personality, and I could see several of the animals that lived with her at that residence. And that's a part of the vetting process that I go through. Because it's one thing to say you're a psychic medium. It's one thing to say that you've worked on hundreds of cases and you've done things. It's a way of building that trust with the police force that I work with, which I am honored that any police force comes and sits with me and says, hey, can you shed some light on this? Because I'm a team player. It's all about the pieces to the puzzle. And the police are trained with the resources to be able to put that puzzle together. And if I can supply a piece or two, I'm happy to do that. I really, really am. So can anyone use it? Yep, they can. Start to practice. Grab somebody's keys. Now, the hardest pressure about doing that is making sure you can validate what you're seeing. Like, for instance, I had someone give me a piece of jewelry that she used repurposed old watches and made them into art and was amazing at what she did. Well, she gave that to me as a gift. I put that watch on and woof, that person who owned that watch, was not a nice person here on the physical plane. Was not a nice person. Her energy was just not nice. And so I had told that person, I thanked her for the gift. I thought it was lovely. I very much appreciated it, that gesture, but I could not wear it. I just couldn't, because the energy that previous owner had was so imprinted on that watch and she wasn't a nice person, that I couldn't wear it. It couldn't be part of my etheric or part of my energy field. But let's do a quick demonstration, right? It can work with phones. So what I want you to do is sit down and clear your mind. And you're like, how do you do that? There's like, my mind is always going. Meditation, people. Just sit down, listen to a little guided meditation. For those people on my Amazon, try that again, Kim, on my Instagram who are subscribers, I have guided meditations there for anybody who subscribes to my Instagram channel. So, and they're quick little 30-second, maybe a minute, just get you in the right headspace, shall we say. So clear your energy, right? Clear your mind. And pick up something. Have a watch. Have a phone. And let it, maybe a coworker, maybe they'll play along with you. And just hold on to it and start to anything you hear, see, or feel. You're like, hear? Sure. You may hear the backfire of a car. Write that down. Now, some people, when they go cerebral back and forth, it's a little difficult. So just remember the backfire of a car. Maybe you can describe a room. If you see a big old stuffed chair when you hold the watch. All right. It doesn't have to make sense to you. See, the problem is when people are trying to tap into their psychic sense, cognitive mind gets in the way. And you know those voices. What? A big stuffy chair? Who would keep a big stuffy chair? It's old. Put it out in the curb. No, don't listen to that voice. Just a big stuffy chair. It's not about talking within your own brain about what you're seeing. I don't want you to dissect it, make sense of it. Just anything you see, hear, feel. Boom, let it come out. Just say it. Big stuffy chair, backfire of a car, and maybe elephants. You're like, that, what? And let's say you're holding somebody's watch. Well, guess what? They have a collection of elephants in their house from all their travels. Little elephants. They're good luck charms, they believe. Okay. Big stuffy chair. Yep. They have a big stuffy chair out in the porch that they love to sit and watch the traffic go by in their porch. And occasionally a car backfires. Well, you're describing that person's environment. Now, how does that play into a case? Well, let's say at the place of that murder, there's a big stuffy chair. Let's say there's a house that's got a bunch of mementos of elephants. And let's say the night of the murder, there was a car backfire. A couple neighbors heard it. All of those are pieces of a puzzle that individually don't add up, don't make sense. But to a detective, a PI, or anybody trained to work in this case, that's what she's seeing. So that puts them on a direction of narrowing down suspects. And that's how, it works in its simplest form. So, that's a quick look at, doing psychometry. I find that metal retains the highest degree of those pages within the chapter of somebody's life. I've actually held on to the shoes that somebody was murdered in. Yeah. That retained energy, sweatshirts, photographs. But psychometry is holding on to that object. And so give yourself a chance to work on that and see what you can pick up. You never know, right? So as always, I'd like to leave you with a mediumship moment. Just happened to me this past week. I was in a meeting with a bunch of people, and it was an exciting meeting of the minds and talk of opportunities moving forward. And one of the questions they asked me is, I was in a crowded room. So I was in a conference room, but I could see probably 40 people in front of me. They were like, when you're in that kind of environment, how can you turn it off? I said, I never can. I can turn it down. And there I was in a meeting, and a father figure came through. And he made my head hurt. He talked about a brain tumor. And he showed me that he was involved in film industry. Well, sure enough, one of the people in the room, that was her father, who had crossed some years ago from a brain tumor. And so he was thrilled to come forward, pass along how absolutely proud he was that his daughter followed in his footsteps, but even further in the career path. And he talked about his grandchildren that he never got to meet on the physical plane, but enjoyed playing with on the spiritual plane. And he made a point for me to draw a picture of her wedding venue, specifically her wedding venue. And he kept saying, I was there, damn it, I was there. He also pointed to a piece of jewelry, and he went like this, which is my symbol for cufflink. Well, many tears were shed, and she was forever grateful. And yes, her father was in the movie industry. And I described the wedding venue. And in fact, she made one of his cufflinks into a necklace that she was wearing that day. And I was honored to be able to pass along a loving message from a father to his daughter to let her know that he's still with her. And that, as I always say, keep chatting with your angels because they can hear you.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time for another episode of Mediumship Moments. If you enjoyed this episode of Kim's podcast, check her out on Instagram and TikTok at Kim Durham Medium.